All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. If everyone can take their seats so that we can get rolling here. I have a brief statement I'm going to read before we get started into our meeting, and please indulge me for just a moment. We all know that old saying, a cliche that it is, the elephant in the room. And I'd like to address my elephant this evening to begin our meeting. Yesterday, my son Connor was arrested on drug charges. Connor's battled addiction for the past several years now, and those of you who know me well know my family has tried to fight the good fight to get him help and end this scourge. Sometimes, when a person is confronted with something so overwhelming like addiction, there has to be a bottoming out, a wake-up call, an epiphany, a catharsis, a life-altering event, whatever you want to call it, before that person can begin to heal. I am hopeful that this is my son's wake-up call. On the one hand, I've been lied to, stolen from, manipulated, schemed against, played by one of the closest people in my life. On the other hand, it seems like yesterday that Connor was my little buddy, who I reared alone, tagging along, going to wherever I was going, reading books together every night before bed, playing baseball and basketball, learning about music and movies, and all those things that we all try to nurture our kids with. There's a natural impulse to ponder where I went wrong, that I'm responsible for poor nurturing, that he's the product of my parental mistakes. I'm trying to avoid making this about me as I try to figure out where I go from here to get his life right. On the one hand, I've had so many things taken from me these past few years, tangible things, but also peace of mind. The ability to sleep well at night is a luxury you're not entitled to when you have an addict in your midst. You're always apprehensive about leaving your home, especially overnight, because you know that coming back, something you treasure will be gone. You're always waiting for the phone call, that phone call, that your son has overdosed and he's been found, but he is gone. These feelings are always there, gnawing at you, an incurable, omnipresent affliction. This disease impacts so many other people other than the addict. On the other hand, there's this bright, talented, charming guy, a guy who can play any musical instrument well, who can quote famous philosophers and authors, who knows more about music and movies and books than his old man who introduced him to such things will ever know. A super athlete who once represented BUHS as an all-state basketball player and who also performed quite well on the baseball diamond. A guy who's bright and college educated, who should be able to do anything he sets his mind to doing. Some well-intending folks have mentioned to me already that they're sorry for the shame, humiliation, embarrassment that I must be feeling about this situation. I can only tell you from the deepest place in my heart that of all of the possible human emotions and sensations, I could not care less about feelings for myself. I don't care about how I'm judged by others about this ordeal. I'm simply profoundly sad for Connor. I'm grieving for my son, and I lament the bad choices he has made. I will remain ever hopeful that somehow he will survive this disease and return to playing music, doing wood projects in the garage, walking his dog, and getting healthy. I hope that he has not introduced this disease to anyone else. I would not wish that upon my most substantial detractor or antagonist. I have long been committed to advancing programs to give recovering addicts second, third, fourth, and fifth chances. That commitment won't end because of this situation with my son. It only invigorates my efforts. As I've observed on a number of occasions during my time as mayor, this drug epidemic is an equal opportunity plague. It knows no boundaries insofar as race or gender or religion or socioeconomic status or age or orientation. If you don't have a family member or a friend confronted with addiction, count yourself fortunate as you are blessed. I apologize for any distraction this causes my mission to do the best job I can for our city, that entity and organization, just like all of you, that I so dearly love and will always support. I promise to continue to work hard to make our community the very best it can be. If my frankness tonight helps but one other person or family in dealing with their own pain, then my candid sharing tonight is all worth it. Please join me in thinking about and praying for everyone, our lost souls who are battling addiction, and all of those who love and support them during our moment of silent reflection this evening. Thank you very much. Mary Allbaugh, would you be so kind as to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well said. Okay, Amby, are you going to introduce Mr. David Howe to us, our external auditor, CPA? I'll let you introduce David. You work with him the closest, and
I'll introduce our auditors. They just finished an audit up for us for the year ending June 30th, 2017, and they're here tonight for an exit conference. And this is David Howe, CPA.
evening. It's great seeing you.
And Terry.
Good to be here, Mayor. We had to postpone our arrival a couple of meetings. One of the promises I made Amby when I proposed when the audit, being your auditor, was that I would do you a good job. And we've been very thorough. And I'm very happy with the job that we've done, the audit that we've performed. And I'm privileged to be here tonight to present that to you. Mayor, I had Amby just distributed a letter to each of the members of council, yourself, and the Honorable Recorder. And I'm not going to read it verbatim, just a couple of highlights because it hits on the audit. I'm not going to hit every point of in the audit report itself. It's a pretty big document, but we will definitely hit the highlights. First, any difficulties encountered in performing the audit. We had no difficulties that we encountered in performing the audit. All records was promptly and readily made available to us. Amby and her staff did a wonderful job at getting us what we needed. They were very hospitable toward us, and we appreciated that. Next, any all corrected misstatements. All the misstatements that we noted while we were performing the audit misstatements means errors or omissions that we found has been recorded and are present in this financial statement. The biggest omission that we found was for GASB 68, which is a relatively new pension disclosure. And traditionally, until more people become familiar with it, they're relying on the auditors to help make those adjustments and those disclosures. It's a pretty lengthy footnote and process. We had no disagreements in management as far as the presentation of the financial statement, although I don't know, can you really disagree with Amby? Management consultations with other independent accountants, we are not aware of that. Sometimes when there's disagreements, we'll have a client will go outside of the auditor-client relationship and ask for an independent accountant's opinion on something, but we encountered no issues where that happened either. All right, that covers the letter. You can read that yourself. And if it's okay, I'll get right into the audit report. Starting on page 3 is the independent auditor's report. This is the report that you ultimately hired us to provide to you. In this report, it sets forth what your management's responsibility is, what our responsibility is with the auditor, and what we found and what we are opining upon. Our opinion is based on these financial statements and them alone, those alone. We gave you guys the best opinion that you could get. It's an unmodified opinion on all of the opinion units except for one, and that was the water fund. We had to give a qualified opinion on the water fund because you guys have a very large inventory of items that we were not engaged at June 30, 2017 to be here when they took the physical inventory to observe that. And because we were not able to observe the physical inventory at June 30, 2017, nor were we able to satisfy ourselves in any other manner to the value of that inventory and the quantity of it, we were bound by professional standards to issue a qualified opinion. Is there any questions on that from council? Okay. Now, I can say that June 2018, although we have not performed that audit yet, we were here and we did observe the inventory. So for 2018, the qualification for that reason will be going away. All right. Now, Mayor, do you want me to run through the numbers, or do you want me to let you guys do that at your leisure? Or?
David, many of us have been through this so many times.
Okay.
I don't know that you need to get into that level of detail, but we're deferring to you.
Yeah, I kind of had that feeling when I was reviewing your minutes and stuff. You guys are pretty familiar, and Amy does a good job of keeping you apprised of the financial condition. On page 51 is our report. Because we did our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards, we have to issue a report on internal controls and on compliance. Now, our report on internal controls. We did not do an audit on your internal control system. We are not providing an opinion on your internal control system. What we did is we came in and we got an understanding of how things work, the process of the accounting process that was good enough for us to plan our audit. Do you do bank reconciliations? Yeah, okay, we want to look at those, that kind of thing, right? We didn't get into a great detail of the ins and outs of internal control. That's not the normal part of an audit. If you want that is a agreed upon procedures outside of an audit to do that kind of thing. However, we are bound in the process of obtaining an understanding of the internal controls. If we become aware that you have a material weakness, then we make that known to you. However, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the internal controls that we feel that need to be communicated to you or that we're bound by professional standards to communicate to you. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. The second part of that report is compliance and other matters. we have to design our audit to test for compliance with laws and regulations that if the city does not comply with, would be material to their to the city's financial statements. We'll also look at things that aren't quantitative materiality, but qualitative. Things that the general public, if you were out of compliance with, would raise their eyebrows, so to speak. Of all of the laws and regulations and the bond documents that we tested your compliance with, we did not find any non-compliance with any of those documents. And if you have a question like what kinds of things we test compliance with, I would be happy to answer that. Is there any questions so far?
No, it's sounding pretty good so far.
Pardon?
It's sounding pretty good so far.
All right. So that being our auditor's report and what we found and what I'm presenting to you, the other thing that we provided to you is a motion to accept the audit. And in the past, I've always just asked for the council to pass a motion to accept the audit, but after experience and time has told me that it needs to be a little more meaningful thing, I have given you a written motion that I would like the council to consider to be moved and approved.
Let me read through this real quickly. This is David Howell's proposed motion, and one of you can make it, second it, we'll put it on the table for discussion. Be it duly moved that, first, the audit of the city of Buckhannon for the year ended June 30, 2017, as conducted by the firm of David L. Howell, CPA, the firm, has been presented to the full council of the city at the meeting on September 6, 2018 by David Howell, CPA. All members of council, the honor mayor, and recorder have been given a full copy of the audit report. David Howell, CPA, explained that his audit was not designed to detect fraud, nor to give an opinion on the internal control structure of the city, but was to give an opinion on the financial statements, and that fraud or weaknesses in internal control may exist and have not been detected by the firm. The firm's test procedures were based solely upon his judgment and have not included an examination of all transactions of the city during the period under audit. Therefore, the financial and compliance audit for the year ended June 30th, 2017 be approved. So you see what our auditor is asking our motion to say. This is what would be reflected in our minutes if someone would like to endorse this motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mrs. Albaugh. May I have a second to her motion?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Rylands. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing of the need for none, I'll call for that question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion, the minutes will reflect that the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. You guys got to head back south this evening, right?
Yes, sir.
Please travel safely, and we'll look forward to working with you this next year.
All right.
We've already
It'll be soon.
Yeah, we just closed out
We'll
June
get caught
30,
up.
2018, right?
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a
Oh,
comment.
yeah, Dave, Thomas, yeah.
I think it's important to note that if the members, any member of the council had some issues that we felt in regard to internal controls, we would have the opportunity to ask the auditors at some point in time to take a look at that. That's part of our fiduciary responsibility. But I think we all have confidence that, as you have stated very aggressively, David, accountability and transparency is very important. And with Amby and the job that she has done working with the council and the supervisors, I think that from my perspective, that we run a pretty good organization. And I don't think any of us have any issues as far as internal controls.
That was pretty much your, Councilman Thompson, that was pretty much the conclusion we reached, not only on the things we looked at, but we had made several communications to each member of the council, as well as management, about those things, and nothing came back that raised our eyebrows.
And sometimes we've had issues,
Yes.
That happens over with any organization.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Safe travels.
Thanks, Dave.
See you again soon. Take care.
Be safe.
Okay, our next guest who was on the agenda, and we have a couple other folks who want to speak that just signed up tonight to address council. Tim Rees. Tim? Oh, there you are. Jeez, I was looking back at the wrong, it was on the left. I should have known.
Mr. Mayor, council members, we are here asking council to mitigate our neighborhood's problem of being burdened by college students and in another case, academy school employees consuming our on-street parking. Representing West College Avenue across from Academy School, we have Rick and Sharon Wright and Bill and Peggy Dahlheim here. I wanted you all to know that this is not about me. Academy school employees are consuming the on-street parking, blocking driveways and obstructing views for exiting those driveways. We have 7 signed petitions, all full-time residents, a majority of the property owners and residents in that area. Representing the streets east of South Florida Street and west of Meade Street, including College Avenue, Barber Street, Fayette Street, and Pocahontas Street, we have Philip Key, Marilyn and Mike McCauley, and the Venerable Mrs. Patty Strader, my next door neighbor and good friend. For that area, we have 22 signed petitions from full-time residents, plus 1 landlord representing 4 residential units for a total of 26 resident petitions. Again, a majority of the property owners and full-time residents. I stopped seeking petitions when it was clear that a majority of the aforementioned neighborhood residents were in favor of an ordinance to remedy these situations. The consumption of our on-street parking by college students or academy grade school employees weakens our neighborhood by impairing our ability to move materials for housekeeping and maintenance, hindering our efforts at landscaping by ourselves or contractors. It prohibits the city street sweeper from moving leaf debris, allowing excessive nutrients to be funneled into our city's water source, causing algae and bacterial blooms, which burdens our city's ability to treat our water. It hinders snow removal during significant snow events when on-street parking becomes even more essential. It impairs our ability to entertain or receive guests and family, and hinders contractors' ability to access our homes, as well as hindering home health care workers' access to our homes. A few characteristics of an R2 neighborhood that some people may not be aware of is in comparison to an R1 residential neighborhood. An R1 residential neighborhood is the most restrictive. I call it the country club of residential neighborhoods. It's most restrictive regarding lot size yards, and off-street parking, with a minimum lot width of being 85 feet, with a minimum side yard of 24 feet, with a minimum of one side being 10 feet. R2, our neighborhood, has a minimum lot width of 60 feet, with a minimum side yard of 20 feet, with a potential minimum of 8 feet on one side. For many homes, the side yards are 10 feet per side. To put this into some perspective, Buckhannon was established in 1816 by the state of Virginia. 47 years later, West Virginia became a state. 30 years later, my house was built in 1893. At that time, transportation other than something coming from the rails by a horse and buggy or horse and wagon. 20 years later, Henry Ford worked out the assembly line for automobiles. It wasn't until 1930s that half of American households owned a car. Today, the average household owns 2.3 automobiles. Looking back, a Model T Ford was 68 inches wide. Today, the F-450 is 90 inches wide. You couldn't open your doors in a driveway 10 feet wide without hitting a wall or a fence. As more and more cars become part of a household, you can see that on-street parking has become more essential to an R2 neighborhood. Considering these issues, availability of on-street parking in an R2 residential district has become essential to the viability of the R2 neighborhood. When the college students or the academy school students consume this on-street parking, it cripples our neighborhood. Again, we ask you, the council, to do what must be done to mitigate this burden, including enforcement. Thank you.
You said college students and academy school students. You meant academy school employees?
Employees, I meant employees, yes. That's represented by some people here that are part.
So there's a new element to this that we hadn't broached before. I mean, it was kind of target earlier was West Virginia Wesleyan College and
It was the students.
students and employees, but
Yeah.
now we're going further up the street, looking at similar protections for the folks on the upper end of College Avenue.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was always in there, but I never got a chance to bring that up because we got tabled for quite a while
Okay.
there.
Tom, do you want to speak to this a little bit? I know we've been bandying.
Well, I think I would take issue with Dr. Reese's characterization. This issue about College Avenue and Academy employees has never been raised before, and it represents significant mission creep with respect to this ordinance. The ordinance is drafted, discussions are ongoing, and you know, I don't know what to say other than the ordinance is drafted and it's available for consideration at whatever time that the council wishes to take it up. You know, I think we have had a number of discussions on the substance of the ordinance. I think there are some changes that have been made due to feedback, and there were some initiatives. There was an agreement that there was going to be some attempt by the college folks to mitigate this problem on their own. And we're, 3 or 4 weeks into the semester, and, you know, I mean, as a policy matter, not necessarily my place to say, but I don't know that those attempts have been given an adequate time to set yet. In any event, previous discussions on this topic have said that there would be no implementation of any change before January 1st. That being the case, we would have until November 30th to pass an ordinance on second reading, or at least say more appropriately, the second meeting of November, in order to pass an ordinance on second reading in order for one to take effect by that time. And the question is whether or not the outside efforts to try to remedy this problem have caught on yet. I will say that, again, just to reiterate, this this new addition of College Avenue on the west side of Meade Street and the west side of all the way up to Route 20 is, you know, I mean, it's a new element that would have to be worked into any draft ordinance at the council's direction.
Tom, would you just paraphrase the existing draft ordinance, what's in there?
The current draft ordinance, the most recent draft of the ordinance says that that there would be permit parking only on the certain streets in the zone that we had discussed, and I think that we had even taken out anything to the west of College Avenue. That this was all going to be between College Avenue and Camden Avenue, between Meade and Florida and South Florida. That was the zone that we had zeroed in on for that was the biggest problem. That for each property owner of a discrete tract, there would be 1 or 2 permits issued free of charge from City Hall. There would also be signage erected, and there would be a fine levied for a violation. The parking restrictions would be in place between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. I think was the last one. 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Monday through Friday only, and I think that's where we're at. That was the state of the ordinance at its last visitation.
Was the parking restricted to only permit holders between the hours of 8 and 5?
Yes, that's correct.
What if, I mean, I'm sorry if I'm speaking out of turn, but I mean, it seems to me that a compromise here, because the issue in the beginning is that when I went door to door in that area, people were apprehensive about signing up for a permit because of the restrictions that could go along with that. What if we look at we have a 2-hour turnaround downtown. What if we just look at a 2-hour turnaround, as you suggested earlier on, from hours of 8 to 4, in this area, and it would incorporate maybe even down close to the parish house, because Dr. Marvin Carr's here, and he left a message on my phone today with some concerns on Sedgwick Street. What if we designate an area that just has a 2-hour turnaround parking and leave it at that? Because, I mean, it seems to me that we would be eliminating the permit, which carries a lot of concern. I get it. And we would be requiring vehicles to turn over every 2 hours, just as they do downtown. So that would restrict people from coming and just camping out all day. So is that something that we could?
What would that do for the residents?
Yeah, the residents without off.
We have to move our car every two hours to the next street or something? I mean, I'll just explain why we need on-street parking. I have proposed several changes that which I had forwarded to people, and I assumed it had gone to the mayor, to the attorney. But we had changed that because even the 8 to 4 was somewhat restrictive to the residents, because we had to be especially careful about our own cars then, or someone coming to our house. So we proposed a 2-hour parking limit except by residential permit Monday through Friday on those streets and streets affected by by the grade school. And we also have proposed, since Mr. Rollins brought up at the Consolidated Public Works, that would be a citywide ordinance with areas to be designated for enactment or enforcement by, petition or application through here. So you would just say it's on all R2 residential areas of the city, it would be 2-hour parking limit except by residential permit Monday through Friday. And there would be no fees permitted. All Wesleyan events are excluded. All city designated events are excluded. And you would have two permits per residence, and you could have a guest permit, and townhouse, row houses, things like that. Boarding home stuff would be excluded because they're transient. So that I assumed that information had already made it to the attorney.
A lot of those changes were implemented in the most recent draft, particularly the change of permits being issued for each, 2 permits being issued from each dwelling to 2 permits being issued to each lot, being an important change that was discussed.
And I've met with Wesleyan, and they didn't seem opposed to what we had started here, because say if you have a student, now theirs is strictly up here by the across from the Academy School, that's strictly Monday through Friday. We're in a slightly different complication down here in that, but I met with Wesleyan, and they weren't opposed to this, that say if it was a student that was commuting and came to 1 class a week or something like that, or 1 class every other day, they could park there for 2 hours and take off. And like downtown, if they did have another class that day, they could move their car down to the next street, or the next street, or the next street for 2 hours. They're not parking it there all day and all night, which is what's going on now, which they don't move them. They live in the dorms, and we're parked out. So the 2-hour parking, except by residential, that would mean that all of us could leave all of us that live on that street, we could put a permit in our window, and we could park there all day or all night. Anyone else could come by, and the only problem with the 8 to 4 was enforcement. That was ease of enforcement, because it's very cut and dry. This is going to require that the city designate some resources at the beginning of each school semester from the police department and the parking officer to, once that gets spread, it's going to quit. Once a few people get tickets, and then not going to be much enforcement. The transient nature of the students are after 2 or 3 years, the people that even park there are going to be gone, and the new people moving in will hear, well, you get a ticket if you park there. So for a couple of years, we're going to ask for a little bit of support for enforcement.
Do you think there's a possibility that taking this action that you're recommending would move these problematic parkers, so to speak, creating a problem in another area of town?
Possibly. Here's what it comes down to, and I call it the fragility of a student, in that it's how close you are. You can even watch on some of the streets, they'll park it all the way back to that very last space to take, because that's 8 steps more. And many of the students that were down here at another meeting complained, well, I don't want to walk from that parking lot down there. I can walk from here, it's a lot easier. So, it's a possibility if it's there, they might go across South Florida Street and park on those streets, but I think it's more sloth than anything else. I don't think that's a big risk. And because if we do this citywide, if that becomes an issue, those people could petition city council and we extend the signs down there. Pretty soon it's going to be too far to walk. And then all of a sudden that parking lot behind the nursing building is going to look very, very convenient.
When you talk about the commitment of the city to whatever we decide as an ordinance to administer and increase the amount of time that our law enforcement has to be involved in parking on the residential streets. Some colleges will do that working with the city. They'll take on that financial responsibility. And
To enforce?
Yes. There are colleges that have had issues with parking because a lot of it has to do with you need to separate, when you say Wesleyan students, there's a huge difference between a residential student versus a commuter student.
Of course.
Versus a person that is in one of the fraternity houses, or in some campuses, sorority houses. Some colleges actually, there's a boot you can put on a vehicle. And so I know there was a lot of times before the police officer would get, or the security officer would get to the car, there was like a grapevine, oh, you better move your car, you're going to get in trouble. Some colleges went to a boot system where they actually would put a boot on the car and the person couldn't move the car until they went into the security office.
Right.
and
You know,
had to pay
the
a
problem I see is that as a city, we don't really have any authority to enact policy for Wesleyan.
Right.
We're acting the city to mitigate this problem because that's the city streets. It's a neighborhood that is being crippled somewhat by this parking and, the enforcement, yes. Can they come up there all the time and do it? No. I asked about if we had video surveillance, could we do that? And they said yes. But if someone challenged it, I would have to show up in court to say, this is my video. And I can't leave my office in the middle of the day to show up at a court hearing. So maybe the city could just put up video, and then you could just go straight from that, and enforcement would just be, you saw them there 2 hours, parked overnight, whatever. At the 8 to 4, what was happening, what was being good is if you know that students not going to get up at 8 o'clock and move their car the next morning.
Well,
So the parking officer would just come up, if they're parked there at 8 o'clock, ticket, and then it's not going to take long till they stop.
Yeah, but whatever we do, we need to, we're glad that Wesleyan's here.
Oh yeah, I'm not here to
and
castigate Wesleyan.
I understand
I'm trying to
that,
mitigate this problem.
But we need to try to figure out a system working with Wesleyan and working with Academy. And Marvin Carr, I did talk to Marvin today. We got to come to a solution that involves everybody, and everybody feels good about it.
And when we came up with the downtown parking plan over a 4-year period, we focused on being a non-punitive, welcoming community. And by providing free parking off the street, 2 hour on the street, that the parking lots are full, and there seems to always be about 80% occupancy on the street.
Well, you know what, I've felt that.
I don't disagree. I live on Florida Street, and I see that there's an empty lot across the street, and sometimes those cars sit there for months. Actually, there was one 2 years ago with a flat tire, and then the parent came at the end of the semester and fixed the tire, and they got rid of the car. But that's really not, how do we mitigate that kind of behavior without appearing not aligned with being a welcoming?
Well, that's why I think
community.
when I propose that we go from the restriction from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. to the 2 hour parking, that does allow anybody to show up for a class. It does not allow for Agnes Howard and Fleming and I mean not Fleming, but Holloway and whatever. We don't become an adjunct park. The city is not an adjunct parking facility for Wesleyan students, and that's why it's being done, and they're left there for days at a time. And I asked you all to walk by there during the summer and during this time of year, and there's no doubt that every one of those streets, at Phillips' house there, they have access, they can park in back. We all have an off-street parking one way or another. But he works a different shift. It's a musical car. You pull it at night. The next morning, someone's got to pull a car out, move a car back in, or you got to do it that night when that one space in front, as I said here, that in an R2 in an R2 district that on-street parking is a crucial part of our ability to survive and thrive. And to have it consumed like that is ridiculous, and it's just been escalating over the last 8 years, and we all know why. And the only thing we can do is enforce something there, and I think the only reason that keeps going on is because there is absolutely no enforcement. There's plenty of parking. There is plenty of parking over there. It's just a few more steps. So I don't know that it's not like they don't have any place to park. They just choose either. Many of them do have a parking permit. This is just closer. And they'll leave their car there for days. They won't park it. Even though they don't move their car for days, they won't take it down to the parking lot and leave it there for days. They'll leave it where if they do decide to use their car, it's much fewer steps.
So
And at the same time, blocking all of us out of parking.
It's a meism society today.
If I may say something, I work a week of days, a week of midnights. Week of days, week of midnights. 75% of the time it is 12-hour days. It was 110 degrees in Court Hart today. When I get home at 6 a.m., I don't want to walk 3 blocks to my house. I have pictures on my phone from today at 6 o'clock. There has been a car illegally parked in front of my house, was written a ticket on the 4th. The car is still sitting there, blocking my neighbor's sidewalk. Only 1 ticket on that car.
They probably don't even know they've got
They
it.
probably don't even know. And it is,
Thanksgiving, they'll know.
that car is from Maryland. The car in front of it, Ohio. The car in front of it, Virginia. Like he said, yes, I do have parking behind my house. I have a 67 Volkswagen that I am working on. So it is taking up a spot in my driveway. And like he said, if I come home at 6 a.m., I'm ready for bed. I don't want to wait till 8 o'clock to move my vehicle so that my wife can back out, me pull back in, and then 8 hours later, we got to play musical cars again because I'm going back to work.
Well,
It's just,
This is not a light-hearted thing. This is a
Yeah,
very
like-
serious problem, and a very serious problem in our neighborhood.
But you're also gonna have to use the word tow, okay?
Well, I don't mind.
I would love to see the BMW parked in front of my house towed.
Yeah.
Because I know his parents can afford the tow bill.
I've been being gentle
I
with
mean-
people suggesting.
I think we need to be a little careful about what we're doing in public.
Right, I've been gentle, and I think,
Property, even though
I
it's
sat
adjacent
with
or in front of
Wesley
your-
on this, and they're pretty much in
residence.
agreement with me on this.
So,
Let's, there's some other folks that wanted to address council about this. I think what we need to do is to get back to our draft ordinance and try to have something on the table for us to look at the next meeting. We can't take action tonight.
Of course not.
Not under strategic.
But I did think that that information was already forwarded to the attorney.
Everything you sent to me was sent to Tom.
Okay, you didn't even see about the 2 hour, did you?
I've received so much stuff
Okay,
on this topic,
sorry.
I can't keep track of what the positions are from one day to the next.
Okay.
They have changed a little bit here and there. But let's get this ordinance back on the table. And, we want to share it with the college, and we want to share it with Sarah Stankus so that she can get it to her principal up there. I mean, we're all about transparency,
Yeah.
and,
That's why we're all here.
I'm sure-
I wanted you to see it wasn't me. Someone
Yeah.
said it was me.
I
No,
mean,
it's our neighborhood. We're all.
Sarah Stankus and Joel Thierstein, the school superintendent and the college president, they don't want to be bad neighbors any more than, but they're not aware of the specifics of the problem. We need to get them out there to see what a situation looks like.
I did a
at 1
slideshow
o'clock
with
in
the
the
CFO, the same one I did for Consolidated Public Works.
Scott
showing
McKinney, yeah.
That, yes, and they were all understood. They just, they thought the 2 hour thing would handle those people that were gonna come in for a class and go on home and stuff, and if they had to come back later, they'd go to the next street. It didn't seem like a problem.
They have 4 blocks for it.
We will more than tweak, but less than gut
Okay.
the current ordinance.
Yeah.
And bring it back to the table as a draft at the next meeting, with the anticipation that we'll take action on it in October.
Okay, that's cool.
And,
I just wanted
I still-
everybody,
I still like-
here to be part of this.
Yeah, I still like the idea of if we can pass the thing in October and effect it January 1, that still gives a couple of months to get the word out to everybody.
And,
Look,
you know, I
here's the
did
new
send-
rule when the spring semester
I
starts.
did forward to Teresa, who sent on to Amby, a method of a piece of software that MPL could put, Raven Rock could put in, where it prints, it's the paper door hangers with the barcodes on them, and people would show up with their registration. We could print our own placards, so we don't even have to farm those out, so, and it just got an expiration date on them, so
We'll
we
have
can do
to
that in-house.
Work out the technical details.
Right, I've sent the whole outlay to City Hall.
Before we move on to the next thing, Marvin, my neighbor Marvin, did you want to say anything else in addition to what's been said?
Yes, please. Thank you for the privilege of speaking. Jay suggested I come and say a word tonight. I represent the parish house, and the parish house appreciates this community, and as I taught West Virginia history, I bragged on Buckhannon, and Upshur County is the healthiest town and county in this area. And the parish house appreciates the support that we get. We're requesting that the area, the parking area on Sedgwick from the corner of College across from the parish house and the clothes closet, I have the 2-hour parking during our time from 8 o'clock till 2 o'clock. After that, whatever, those are the hours that the parish house and cross lines are involved. That area, that includes 8 parking spots. And we see this as separate from the big picture. We think it's a simple solution. We have communicated through John to the fraternity. Theta Chi is on the other side of the street, and we have a healthy relationship with them. They have a parking lot in the back. When school started, we suddenly found a few new students parking there and not moving. We serve a lot of people that come for help during the day. We have the alley behind, and the staff and the volunteers park there. So to have those 8 spots free for that time with the 2-hour limit would be a simple solution. We would hope that you could do that quicker and that the semester started, and we'd like for you to consider it and whatever procedure you need to take. But
Marvin, the nature of the beast with state code that we have to follow, we have to have a 2-reading ordinance, and then it's 30 days thereafter to effect it. That's not our rules, it's state law.
So this requires a separate ordinance, not just a change of rule by
we may be able
the
to
street
integrate.
commissioner.
We might be able to integrate your parking issues into the other issues. Tom O'Neill's taking some good notes back there, right, Tom? Yeah.
Okay. We thank you for your consideration.
Thank you,
Mark.
Thank you, Marv.
Mr. Key, did you want to say anything else? You were the next on the list, but you've spoken. Okay. And oh gosh, I'm losing. Yeah. Help me out with your name, sir.
Right.
Yeah. You didn't sign up to speak, but you're welcome to address us.
Our situation on our end of the street's a little bit different than the other end. So I live on 9 College, straight across from the academy.
Okay.
There's yellow lines, supposed to be yellow lines painted. Nothing's ever enforced about the yellow lines. I have a hard time getting in and out of my driveway. I have people parking in the driveway, letting kids out to go to school. From my understanding, the school, if you're dropping kids off, you're supposed to go around to the back side and drop the kids off. My wife has addressed that to the principal at the school. The principal at the school says, call the police. There's a policeman at the school. He stands there every morning and watches what goes on. Never says a word. I've got a problem with that. When they block my driveway and I can't get out to go to work, I've got a problem. And they tell me, they've cussed me out. I'm not moving my vehicle until I take my kids across the street. It's my driveway they're parking in. I've got a real bad problem with that.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah, I do. And I have stopped a policeman. That was been a couple of years ago. There was a vehicle parked across the driveway. I was out on Tucker Street. The city policeman went by. I stopped him. I said, and you something about that car parked across my driveway.
Yeah.
And evidently, he went around and wrote him a ticket. And I think he told me at that time it was a $100 ticket. Write 1 or 2 tickets, they're not gonna do it. But the
Well-
policeman straight across the street, I've never seen him tell a soul not to park there.
I think there's some things that we can do relative to your issue that are distinguishable from what Tim Reese is.
Oh, I understand completely.
I think we can get some fresh yellow paint up there and maybe some signage that makes it clearer as to what the rules and expectations will be.
I was mowing the grass one day in the tree lawn. A lady parked across my driveway, and I said, "Lady, you're not allowed to park there." She proceeded to cuss me, told me she was going to school, she'd be back in a little while, and walked across and went to the school.
Jerry Arnold, can we make a point of it here in the next, we got so many projects. going on right now.
I understand.
Jerry's gonna beat me up in the parking lot. Can we maybe get somebody up there to do some fresh yellow paint and consider some signage in the area right across the street from Academy School on College Avenue?
It's not so much the teachers that's causing the problem.
These
It's not
are
the
coming and
employees.
going parents, huh?
That's where the problem's at.
Mayor,
Yeah.
how come the school itself could not be informed officially and send a note home with mommy to mommy
My
or
wife
something?
suggested that, they said they do a newsletter every week.
Well,
My
we
wife
we
suggested
can make that suggestion, but we can't
can't
control the actions of the
Right.
school. But there's some things we can do relative to on-street public parking as an entity that would help improve your situation.
I would add that if that would work, it would work for Wesley. The person's gonna pull in, they're gonna pull in no matter what. And then last year, there were a lot of teachers there. Now, this year, I don't know if the principal said something, but last year, it was 80% teachers parking from the minute they got there to school let out.
It still
And
is.
if they say that, that's good for 2 months, and then they're back. The weather gets cold, they're not gonna walk that far.
And similar to the college kids that farm out every 3 or 4 years, these parents that have
Right,
kids that are
transients.
5 to 10 going to school there, they go to the middle school and it's not their problem anymore. You know, it's a new bunch of parents that got
As
it.
opposed to a full-time resident, is
Yeah.
what we're comparing these things to.
I get it.
We appreciate any help we can get with it.
We'll get on it, and we'll try to, if this sounds acceptable to council, we'll come up with some bullet points, and also between now and the next meeting, reach out to both Sheriff Stankus and the principal at Academy, as well as the administration at the college, to let them know that the problems haven't gotten any better, that it's, same business as usual. And we got to do something for the sanity and safety of the neighbors in the area.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I thank you all for your time. I want you to just hear that we're, after 8 years, we're getting a little fed up here.
What changed, Tim, what changed 8 years ago? You said 8 years ago.
You know what that was, 84 spaces were taken out of the Chapel Oval. And that was the heartbeat and the hub of the campus when I was there, because it was, the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the classroom, the chapel, and the grant they got, or whatever, they needed.
$3 million.
So they got rid of all that parking, and I even communicated with President Balch at the time, no, we're gonna put parking in, but it is a few more steps. But what happened was they chose our streets instead of parking that was made available. So it was and every year, I mean, you could see it escalate every year. There was more and more to where it just came full-time parking on our streets while college was in session. In summer, we get a recession. As I've said before, at the beginning of the school year, we started getting ticked off by Thanksgiving. By Thanksgiving, we were kind of angry, and boy, by Christmas, we just about had it. We're ready to break those cars up, you know? It's just, and every year, it's more and more and more, you know? And it's just, and we know what it was. I didn't know you didn't know it was. You just want me to reiterate that.
I actually wanted you to say it.
Okay.
Unintended consequences.
Yes.
Gifts and grants sometimes.
Yes.
Agree?
There are some, when I'm on the landscaping committee there, and I do have a few suggestions, something they might do for parking there when at the appropriate time, at the appropriate meeting, to suggest a possibility that can help things out. But nothing's going to stop them from parking in our streets now unless there's a reason for them not.
Proper enforcement.
Yeah.
We'll further put our heads together.
Thank you very much.
Reach out to all the other participants and try to
Thank council
improve
for
the
your time.
situation. Thank you for coming. You guys are all welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, you have to stay, you can't leave.
I'd rather have a root canal. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good to see you out with the
It's been many years since you've seen him. Good to see you.
Our next guest.
Hello, Patricia.
Our next guest is our old buddy Matt Kerner. Matt's going to update us on our, seems like yesterday we were doing the inaugural one and now we're planning
Yeah,
to be.
now we are ready for the
Second annual?
second annual Ha-Ha event. It's kind of a celebration of recovery, I believe an anti-stigma event related to addiction. September 23rd, Sunday, Dublin Park, we're going to kick off around noon. Music, we've got some speakers. Two that are really kind of a note are a woman named Emily Burkhead, who is the executive director of a new organization that I was part of founding, West Virginia's chapter of the National Association of Recovery Residences, which is trying to bring some rigor, some clarity to operations like mine, like Opportunity House, so that we can make sure that we're not faced with a bunch of bad actors in West Virginia the way other states have had to deal with. And one of our other speakers is Cindy Corbin, who is with Hampshire Pathways Incorporated. They run recovery programs in Hampshire County. And she right now is the fiscal agent for another organization that I'm part of starting that will deal similarly to the housing initiative, but with the growing field of peer recovery support services, and again, trying to make sure.
A date for the event, I'm sorry, I was typing for him and I didn't get it fast enough.
September 23rd.
September 23rd, thank you.
Start at noon.
Thank you.
And again, just to make sure that as that field develops, that it develops properly, and we can avoid some of the shenanigans that have plagued other states like Florida and California. The peer recovery was recently allowed to start billing Medicaid, and that is what we're afraid will be the genesis of attracting out-of-state people. So those would be two key speakers for this event. I think we're going to try to make it a little lighter. Last year we focused on the people we've lost to addiction. And I think this year we want to celebrate more of the people we have in recovery. I go all over the state speaking at different events and going to different meetings, and Upshur County is actually pretty well known throughout the state as having a strong recovery network. And we have more recovery capital in this county than counties that are much larger than us as far as the number of 12-step meetings and other things that are available. So, we're really proud of that. It's nice to be in other places, to be down in, especially when you're in places like the Southern Coalfield that are taking really the brunt of what's going on addiction-wise in this state, and hear them telling other people, oh yeah, Upshur County, that's where you need to go to get better.
Wow.
And so we just want to celebrate that and hopefully reduce the stigma around addiction.
About a year ago, or coming up on it, there was an executive order coming out of Washington identifying the national plague, and there were going to be programs and resources. Do you want to speak to that? Have you seen any influx of new?
No, not a thing. I made for a nice press release, and that was about it. Nothing real tangible has come down the pike from that.
Anything from the state? Has governor, legislature made any new programs?
Not significant changes. Really everything that's come down the pike as far as new funding has been the result of lawsuits against some of the pharmaceutical companies that help exacerbate the problem. It hasn't really necessarily been terribly helpful. It's certainly what they've paid has not offset the cost of the harm that they've done. So we're still hopeful that that will change. The SAMHSA is, the two organizations that I mentioned were actually the result of fairly substantial SAMHSA grants. And generally, all the SAMHSA money coming into the state has been in the form of a block grant to the state that's then distributed to different organizations like mine. So these were direct grants from SAMHSA to these organizations, which is a little bit of a shift in how things have traditionally happened here. And we're hoping that that'll make a difference. Also along those lines, this Saturday at 10 a.m. we're going to be leaving Jawbone Park. We have a project coordinated by the Opportunity House Vista, Andy Cartier. We're going to be just going throughout town, kind of door to door, distributing information about available recovery resources in this community. Because often we find that people who suddenly find themselves impacted by addiction don't know where to turn for help. And we want to make sure that people know where to go if they find themselves in that position. So hopefully we'll keep this. Right, yeah. And so hopefully we'll keep this going on a maybe a monthly basis. Spend one Saturday a month for a few hours. We did it once, been several months ago, and we hit about 350 houses. So if anybody wants to join us, put your running shoes on, and we'll be leaving Jawbone Park at 10 o'clock in the morning Saturday. At least gathering there, kind of explaining to people what we're doing. And while I'm here, I'd also like to thank the mayor for his courage in talking about how this has affected his family. That is something that we've been trying to encourage for years, because really the stigma and people not wanting to talk about it is one of the biggest barriers to treatment and recovery. Traditionally people have been impacted by shame and guilt and not wanted to admit that somebody in their family has been dealing with this. And the more we can knock that stigma down, it will directly impact how many lives we can save. So thank you for having the courage to talk about that.
Helping us to continue to fight the good fight. And so September 23rd, that's a Sunday this year, not Saturday, noon to about 6.
Yeah.
And music, and there'll
be some
food
food
available down there,
and
good talker, good speakers.
Yeah. Good time. And again, last year we did a balloon release with the names of people that we had lost in the last couple of years. And this year I think we're going to do people that are in active recovery. I don't know. I don't have a count for the state, but I know that nationwide there's about 25 million people living in long-term recovery. And we're trying to encourage them to come out and tell their stories, just like you did.
23 million.
25 million.
25 million.
Yeah, I saw somebody recently say that it was an education thing, that if we were better educated, we would not have addicts, but I'm not sure how that works, because I know there's over 100 doctors in the Physicians Health Program, so.
I don't think addiction discriminates between
No, it
your
absolutely
education
does not.
level or your race or
Yeah, socioeconomic class, so yeah, it absolutely does not.
I think the mayor articulated that extremely well.
Yes.
Comments. One of the things I'm concerned about, Matt, and I don't know how, when you talk about, I think our society has put the head in the sand for years in regard to the challenges we have. And I remember when I was in college, I ran track at IU, Indiana, and I got involved in what they called back then, the coaches were asking the athletes to be a mentor for young kids that were having issues in broken families and so forth, and a lot of us did that. I think there's got to be somehow we can mentor or be role models for individuals that are, addiction can start in the middle school and so forth. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are retired and, don't do a whole lot of things. We need to if we're gonna change our society or save our society, we have got to get people to be committed to working with this problem. And I think people are scared because they don't know how to do that. But I think a lot of people out there would like to do it if we can figure out a way. And, I had problems with drugs and alcohol in my family. My mother, she was going after I was 12 years old. I never wanted to go home. I couldn't wait to get out of high school and never go back because she just wasn't the same person. And I had an issue with one of my children that, my God, right now he's an emergency room nurse. He delivered as one of his own children, and he went through a period that I just thought I was going to, that's why I don't have any hair maybe. But, it's a challenge that we have to deal with in our society. And I've said this many times, we celebrate things we shouldn't celebrate, whether it's violence or the video games that are out there that are disgusting. Fortnite, have you ever seen anything about Fortnite? It's taken off the Hunger series. We're polluting our young people, and somehow we got to turn that tide. And I don't know how to do it, but I'm willing to try to help.
Fortunately, there are some organizations in the county, the Appalachian Impact, came from my church, new community. Justin Bowers started that, and I think that they would love to expand, and that they basically mentor at-risk kids. You don't necessarily have to know anything about addiction or addiction recovery to work with a kid, and just so healing. As far as addiction recovery happens more often in communities than it does in isolation. And I think if you can build that sense of community with children, you would probably go a long way in order to prevent the problem. It's a lot easier to prevent it than to fix it once it's happened.
I think the county commission, the city council, and the school board, and other large organizations, social service organizations, years ago we brought everybody together, I think it was down at the 88, to talk about how we could provide a good environment for economic development for the city. I think we ought to get all these organizations together to say how we're going to deal with this problem and how can we use our resources the best way. I think it's something that we ought to be doing, David. I think you would be very articulate.
We started the 27th of September. Will be our third PTAR meeting, Prevention, Intervention, Treatment, and Recovery. It'll be at our Recovery Center at 47 Cleveland Avenue. And I believe that our speaker is going to be Tammy Nabrog, who is the head of Community Corrections in Taylor and Barber counties. I spent some time with her today. She is an amazing. Out of all the people that do what she does for a living, she has the best data that I've ever seen, and has confirmed for me today some things that I had suspected as far as the pendulum swinging away from opiates and back to methamphetamine. I mean, just the number of dirty drug screens that she's gotten over a year, she can track that. She can see that this month all the dirty drug screens were opiates, and now. Most recently, out of the last group of dirty drug screens, there were 116 of them or something like that for methamphetamine and 6 for opiates. So, and anybody's welcome to attend those from dinner at 6. She'll start speaking around 7. And that's the whole point behind that, is not necessarily for us to just, lecture everybody, about whatever the individual's specialty is, but to kind of stimulate that community conversation. About what can we do with the resources that we have instead of waiting for other resources that may or may not appear, because a lot of times that turns into magical thinking that, as soon as we get all this big bunch of money from whatever lawsuit it is or what, then,
If somebody wants to give a gift, what do they write the check to?
For Opportunity House?
Mm-hmm. Just say Opportunity House and that's it?
Yeah, Opportunity House Incorporated. Our mailing address is P.O. Box 387 in Buckhannon. I think we've got a donate button on our website, which is offhousewestvirginia.org.
Okay, we appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, thank you.
Bro,
And
thank you.
September 23rd, 6.
September 23rd.
6-ish, so.
September 27th is the PTAR meeting, and this Saturday, 10 o'clock at Jawbone Park. And we'll be hitting the streets and handing out literature so people know where they can go for help.
Busy month.
Come to my,
It is recovery month.
come to my house.
Yeah, could you send me a flyer?
Absolutely. We'll make
Yeah.
sure we get them when they get printed out tomorrow.
Unless I already got one in my
We'll bring a
phone.
bunch of them down here and leave them.
Is it really National Recovery Month? I should
Yes,
have
that's
known.
why we've always done things in
We
September.
should do a proclamation or something, and do a little
Yeah.
PR for it.
Yeah, you've been slowing down on that.
Haven't had anything else to deal with.
Inflation on those 98-cent frames.
Yeah. All right.
Matt, thank you.
What's that?
Thank you, Matt.
It's a 0.5%. on-
Yeah. That number,
Half a penny on the
CJ, I can't believe
98
you
cents.
said that.
that number that Matt just mentioned, 25 million people in recovery, there are 325 million-ish people in the United States. So 1 out of 13 people right now are actively in recovery. Think about that.
And then if you take the number of people that each person is an active addiction impacts, you know.
Oh, my God.
That runs out to about 85 million.
Does that include alcoholism too, Matt?
Excuse me?
Does that include alcoholism or just,
Yeah, alcohol's a drug.
okay, all right,
We see it all as one
yeah.
thing. It's actually, and you know, there's things like binge drinking is a primary risk factor for
College kids,
addiction later in life.
yeah, a lot of college kids have been.
Keep up the good work. Let's do a proclamation.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Department and board reports. Callie, you want to lay up the good PR for us and all of our grants and all the gazillions of dollars that are ready to pour through the door, right?
All right.
1.7 million.
Right on the back of the agenda is the first half of my report, but you got the second half separately. It didn't get printed in the first run, so you'll find press releases and information is at the top of the second sheet, and that's the second half of my report. But back to the first page there, behind the agenda, under website and social media, I printed out the Google Analytics dashboard once again for the website, so you can kind of see the amount of traffic we've received over the last 30 days to the website. Looks like a little over 6,000 page views. I did notice that your council bios and photos that I put up have started receiving some traffic, and that reCAPTCHA security that I added to the contact us form seems to be working. Ambi has said that she's receiving fewer spam emails since that was installed, so that seems to be going well with the website. The volunteer for the Galaxy Digital Volunteer Web Platform seems to be working well. We're attracting users both locally, and we've even had a few from surrounding counties wanting to get involved, so that seems to be working well. I have listed there, I had hoped that the revenue review slide presentation would be up today, and I had it, I think I was about 40 minutes into recording the presentation into a video format, and that's when our power went out this afternoon. So I need to redo that in the morning. But the audio has been recorded, and it's just a matter of just having the time to record that as a video file. And then that will be up for anyone that wasn't able to attend that on Tuesday. It'll be up on the website. I'll share it on Facebook as well. And so the information about what the committee presented will be easy to find, I hope. Also, a little spike there at the end, the holiday collection schedule. That seemed to, I posted that on Facebook about the waste collection being delayed, and we got a lot of traffic to the website following that. I also just printed out the flowers post. The previous flower post had done so well. I wanted to thank those folks. So I did a photo of Rob Barber, Katie Davis, Hannah Hannafan, and Raymond Pennington, some of the seasonal staff that worked with him this year in front of the flowers, and that got over 13,000 people saw that post. I think it was over 100, 91 shared it, and we had, I don't remember, over 300 comments on it, and all that I saw were very positive. And so I just gave you a little snippet of some of those. Most beautiful town I've ever seen, and I've seen quite a few in my life. Great Job was one, and it just went on. Everyone was really thrilled about the flowers this year. That was all on the website and Facebook. I just also noted the amount of viewers who have already seen the Truck Fest, Children's Fest, Fall Fest, and Revenue Review Town Hall events. So we did make events, Facebook events for each of those, and each are into the thousands of people who have been reached by those. On the second page, into the press releases and information, we did one on Riverfest. We also had the LED sign advertising that for the paper shred event that's coming up this weekend. We did a press release there, and that's on the LED sign currently. We'll have a September 11th sign up following the paper shred event on the LED sign. We of course did one on the Revenue Review Town Hall, and I have one ready to go for following the town hall, but I wanted to have that slideshow embedded with it before I send it out. So hopefully that'll go out tomorrow morning, as well as our Constitution Week proclamation that we did this morning. As far as outreach goes, Erasmo Rizzo with the Sanitary Sewer Department and I met with Shane Whitehair on some grant opportunities. I attended the school garden grantees meeting, went to Riverfest, of course, that went well. And in general, just doing planning for the Revenue Review, the Hope and Help Fall Fest Community Kindness Day. In grants we received with that People for Bikes, where we submitted the letter of intent, we did get asked for a full application on that, so I'm excited about that. We'll need to get that in by October 29th, I believe it is, so we've got some time there. I've been working on the Clean Community application, and should be wrapping up that soon. That's got a deadline of September 24th. The Wonder and Grow program will begin September 11th at Stalker. That was through the Try This grant funding. Do have news that Sarah Campbell is leaving us with the Volunteer Center to be the Senior Center Director. And so I'll have to say goodbye to her, but we do have a recommendation from our committee on a new hire for that. And that's listed down, I think, in F10 in strategic, so I didn't know if you wanted to discuss that now or later, but we can talk to you a little bit more about that. But we were very pleased with Sarah, and sorry to see her go, but I think she'll be a good partner for us at the Senior Center as well. Let's see. I think that's the gist of it, other than just I always have the upcoming events down there below, and I can go through some of these. Paper shred, September 11th, of course. We've got the Joyce Stockert birthday at Stockert Youth Center that same day on September 11th. Truck Fest and Children's Fest on the 14th and 15th. The Hope and Help Assembly on the 23rd. Fall Fest the 26th or 29th, along with the Dog Days at Jawbone. Those are kind of at the same time. And the Stockert's Elimination Benefit Dinner coming up October 12th, and the Community Kindness and Service Day on the 13th.
Thank you, Callie. I would entertain a motion that we pull F10 out of strategic and bring it to our table.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Rylands, a second by Mrs. Albaugh. Discussion on the motion, no. Call for the question. All those in favor of bringing F10 to the table for action, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. We're now considering under strategic items F10, excuse me, which it would be our approval to hire a new Buckhannon Volunteer Center Coordinator. Callie, Amby, and myself were kind of the informal committee. Given the recency in hiring Sarah, I came to learn that there'd been a very close second person
Yes.
that we wouldn't have been disappointed with, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
She interviewed very well. She also has her master's in business from Wesleyan, just graduated with that in May. She did the 5-year program, so her bachelor's degree is also in business. She had a Dean's List GPA of 3.8 and was a presidential scholar. Has quite a bit of experience with the Center for Community Engagement there at Wesleyan, so worked with volunteers and volunteering herself. I think she would be an excellent candidate. Her name is Casey Gilbert. We did interview her not too long ago, and she's also another benefit. she's currently also doing part-time Potomac Highlands Volunteer Center, very similar, but receive the same grant funding. And they chose the same web platform, Galaxy Digital, so she's already familiar with the software she would be using. So that would be our recommendation for the hire for that position.
I'd be remiss if I didn't note, maybe you mentioned this, and if you did, I apologize for being redundant.
Yes.
But Sarah Campbell has taken the executive director position at the senior center.
Yes, that's correct.
And that is an entity that historically, in no small part because those directors, the tenures have not been all that long, we've had difficulty in solidifying a good working relationship with the senior center.
Mm-hmm.
And we're hopeful that with Sarah segueing, that that'll strengthen that part of our network too.
Oh, definitely. I think she'll remain a good partner for us. She really enjoyed being with the city. She was looking for a full-time position, and we're happy for her to be there at the senior center.
Yeah.
And I think she'll stay active with the volunteer center and getting both the seniors there involved volunteering, as well as bringing community members who are interested in volunteering at the senior center over and doing activities there.
That's great.
Where is Miss Gilbert from?
She is from West Virginia. Of course, she went to Wesleyan, so she has been living here for a while, but she is from New Haven, West Virginia, originally.
So
your recommendation is to hire Casey Gilbert, is that correct? Callie and
That
Abby?
is correct, and she would be working here Tuesdays and Thursdays, which I think would work out well because we've got a little more space back there. Those are the days that Vincent Smith is not here.
And remember, this is a half-time position.
Right.
It is
No
just
benefits.
part-time, grant funded.
we're going to make a motion.
I would entertain a motion.
So much.
I have a
So
motion
moved.
by Mrs. Albaugh, a second by Mr. Thomas. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing the need for none, I'll call for that question. All those in favor of our hiring Casey Gilbert as our second director, executive director of our volunteer center, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Anything else, Ms. Callie?
That's it.
I want to
Unless you
say,
have questions for me.
not a question, a statement. I want to say thank you to Callie for getting the September 11th on the digital sign.
Yeah.
It's going to be nice.
It's probably not up quite yet. It'll go up right
No.
after the paper shred. Should
Right.
be up Saturday afternoon.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
The abandoned mines grant, 1.8 million.
Haven't heard anything yet.
September, October, maybe?
No word yet, sorry.
Maybe. You'll be hearing the corks popping all over town.
Yeah,
So
I'll
get-
let you know.
At your house, Dave? If we get 1.8 million, you come to my house, there'll be plenty of champagne for everyone, that's for sure. Thanks, Callie. Next up is our Public Works Director, Jerry Arnold.
Who has a short report?
Don keeping dinner.
Jerry Snappy Arnold.
That's it. Don keeping dinner warm for you?
Well, I sure hope so.
You sure hope so.
He ate before he came.
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
What are you having for dinner?
Oh, come on. That has to be decided. Let's.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I'll take you to Arby's, David.
We've received $2,000 gifts from Mid-Atlantic Tank Storage Company they're the company that installed our new water tank on Victoria Hill. The checks were for our donations to the Stockard Youth Center new building fund and the Colonial Theater restoration project. Jay and I, as well as Katie, she was there, attended the Roads to Prosperity meeting at the DOH District 7 office, and we asked about completion date for the third lane, which Katie reported on, and also on the railroad crossing on Route 20 North. They anticipated the third lane project would wrap up by the end of September, and they've been in touch with ANO Railroad about the crossing, so hopefully more to come on that. We've received five new lease vehicles in our fleet this month. The water department continued to inspect on the water system improvement projects on Brushy Fork and Liggett Addition. They're working on installing services to the line extension in Tennerton for Jenny Nelson, and attempted to reinstall the raw water pump, but after startup, the guys noticed a vibration and had to remove it and send it back to the pump shop. The sewer department completed the extension for the vacant lot off of Brushy Fork near the auto auction, and working on the storm sewer project on Traders Alley, Milkman Lane. The project involves linear feet of 10-inch storm sewer line and 3 inlets. Waste Department, we've hired a new labor and waste collection. His name is Nathaniel Bailey, and the timber cut on the Peck Run property has been completed. Street Department, the crew continues to work on Traders Alley, and the paving contract for this fall has been completed. Very satisfactory. If you haven't got a chance to drive on those streets that we done, I urge you to do that because it was a much needed improvement. Engineering, the ACP water system improvement project, the water line installation activities for both contracts 1 and 2 continue. The contractor is approximately 60% complete at this time. Still awaiting approval from the Federal Highway Administration regarding the board underneath the Quarter H overpass. The construction for contract 2, Russian Fork Road, is approximately 50% done. Gateway West Engineering and Surveying, the West Virginia DOH District 7 review meeting was held on August the 16th to review the project, working on the comments from DOH 7 at this time. Anticipate submitting the revisions by the end of the month. And the Adrian Public Service District Water System Improvement, Jay's been working on, the preliminary engineering estimate's been completed. Probable project cost to upgrade the existing 5,300 linear feet of 8-inch water line to 10-inch water line. The information will be presented at next week's water board meeting. That's all I have unless you have questions.
Questions for Mr. Arnold?
Jerry, some time ago, a few years ago, we bought a paver or a hook drag behind paver, asphalt paver, correct?
Yes.
Do we still utilize that at all?
We do, yes. We do, CJ, we do, well, one of the projects that we've recently done was Short Alley, was one of our in-house projects. Again, that gives us the ability to use, at the end of the budget year, if we have monies left over, rather than go through the bid process, we can use that to do some smaller jobs we have, and it also gives us the ability to do like extensions to the walk trail, a lot of the smaller stuff. Right now with the contracts that we get, what it amounts to is we're buying blacktop in the $80, $85 range, and we can get contract paving for low 90s, 93, a ton price. So a lot of times on these large jobs, it's not worth our resources, our paver, our fuel, our trucking to do the larger jobs. But these smaller ones, it's more convenient for us to handle in-house, and we'll do that with that paver. Traders Alley will utilize that paver somewhat in Traders Alley for that paver.
And the Gateway West, is there any start date?
Well, we initially had thought that we would have a notice sometime this fall a notice to proceed on construction. But I don't know that that's going to be the case. I'd more realistically say that we're looking at a spring start date. And again, that's going to be a very taxing project on the department because of the flagging. We also have to provide flagging on that job. So you're taking 2 of our crew right off the bat to put in those positions. It's a little different animal on state right away.
Did I hear him say the railroad crossing on Route 20?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You're working on that?
No, the Highway Department has been in touch with A&O Railroad.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but
It's out of it's a state highway, and it's also the railroad right of way, so we can't
Touch it.
Yeah, it has to go through those channels.
We continue to be the squeaky wheel.
in your conversations with the State Highway Department, has there ever been anything discussed about extending sidewalks towards the north part of town, out towards Lowe's or North Ridge?
We can apply for the same grants, CJ. I will tell you that in our 5-year CIP, that is one of the projects that's in the street department's capital improvement plan. Is a sidewalk extension both along Morton Avenue and an extension out towards Lowe's. And I don't know, since, and one of the things that I noticed is since the Dollar General store downtown went out of business, that puts the folks in the high-rise, they have to walk all the way to Walmart if they're walking to the store. It used to be they could come downtown and do that. And I don't know if you've ever tried to walk along Morton Avenue, yeah, it's a daunting task sometimes.
There's no good place to walk there.
There's not.
Especially at night, at dark, when I do a lot of my walking. There's been a couple of times I just about got knocked down the hill.
So with the North Florida Street curbing project, the next step at North Florida Street is to upgrade portions of that sidewalk that are deteriorated. And then there's a spot near the bridge that needs to be worked on, First Street, and then connect to Morton Avenue and get a good walk all the way out to what is kind of a shopping mecca.
It's coming.
Thank you.
Mary's, where's Robbie?
There you go.
I was coach commander.
Commander.
No, don't give him any more titles.
I want to say,
I accept your nomination.
Jerry, you made one of our veterans, retired Korean War veteran, been a member with American Legion for 26 years, and he's a very good friend of mine, Miles Paul. Letting him bring his toys to the Truck Fest. His toys are antique Jeeps, okay? He collects them. He may call you to have somebody to come drive one or two.
I'm sure that will be hard to find.
Okay, good. I just wanted to let you know. He said I might need help.
And that's sneaking right up. Truck
Yeah.
Fest,
Yeah.
That's right.
This weekend, next weekend.
Yeah.
Jerry, one of the comments you made during the presentation Tuesday was that we're going to go back and subcontract out the mowing of the cemetery. Did I hear that correctly during your presentation?
Actually, Amby said there is money there to do that with. I still contend, Dave, that we evaluate that prior to the season. I think we may need to contract part of the season out simply because of getting our part-time employees. But I'm telling you, once the mowing crew gets into full swing with the cemetery, I've had less complaints than I had in the past. I said that before and kind of got in trouble for it, but that's the truth of the matter.
Yeah, I'd like to be part of that evaluation process when you're ready to do it.
Well, that'll be right after the first of the year, because in order to get a bid packet out by the, and actually we're gonna have to try to look at mid-March, because April 1st was the old bid packets, but we're getting, with the last couple seasons, we've actually needed to mow prior to April 1st in the cemetery.
That'll be before consolidated.
Yes, yes.
And then when you made a comment about the Department of Highways and that you'd have to take 2 people off street to do flagging,
Yes.
is there not another way we could handle the flagging so you don't have to lose those 2 street
You know,
departments?
you could contract, you could do a traffic control company, but again, you know, it's like anything else. We have to look at that cost associated with that as opposed to using our people or using part-time people. to do the
Well, I
flagging.
guess they have full-time people that are getting full benefits and that are, you know, been here for years that you need to just go out there and be it.
Is there training necessary to do that work now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about applying for that?
Well,
You know, I begged to be on that when I was an asphalt paver, and then I begged harder to get off of it the next day. It was torture. It just was boring.
well, a lot of students that are, you know, after their first year of college, they had Department of Highway positions for college kids, and a lot of them were flagging. And I know my daughter said, I didn't want to do flagging, Dad, I wanted to work with the asphalt. She changed her mind pretty fast after that.
Robbie Scan, you had a question.
Just a couple of things. Dave, since you brought up the mowing, I mean, I'd like to be part of that discussion too, if you don't mind, because it was, you know, that number 9 of our full-time employees in our street department stuck out like a sore thumb to me. You know, Tuesday night. Seems that our time and versus value ratio, if we've got gentlemen who can, you know, pave streets and pour concrete, it seems that could be better use of time versus cutting grass that's going to be there in 4 days.
Yeah.
But, I just would like to be part of the evaluation, looking at that, because that's just from my standpoint and watching Camden Avenue be mowed week in, week in, week out by a city employee, I wonder about just where our time. There's that comment. And two, a couple times it's been brought up to me, do we still have in operation the street sweeper?
Yes.
Could we utilize that on Main Street a little bit more often to kind of get into the grooves? Because I've had some people comment that it could be run on Main Street maybe a little bit more, especially since parking's restricted no parking after 2 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock, sorry, until daybreak. So if that could be done a few more times, especially as we get into fall and leaves start to accumulate in there.
That was going to be my next comment, Robert, is we will, once the leaves start falling, we do have to run the sweeper more often.
Okay.
With the projects that we've been involved in, it's another one of those things where you have to pull from somewhere. And unfortunately, sweeping is one of those areas that we've had to pull labor from.
One other thing I'll say is I thought you and everybody else did a great job on Tuesday night explaining, the needs of what's going on here.
I didn't do anything. Angie gave my report. I thanked her for it. It was wonderful.
That's why I said you did a great job, because it was so short.
That's exactly required.
As you call it, snappy. Right?
Snappy.
That's right.
Well, thanks, Jerry. Tell all the guys we appreciate.
I have one other comment.
No, you're out.
Go ahead, Mr. Thomas. It's only 9 o'clock.
Oh, it is? Okay, never mind, Jerry, I'll talk to you now. Give me, call me or I'll call you.
She's going to call Tom.
Okay. Next up is Amby Jenkins. Jeez.
Am Barrel.
Money bags, Jenkins. Money bags.
First while.
Colin calls them snappy too, right?
Everybody snapping,
I know. Okay, so,
except Dave don't.
all right, so I'm going to give the balances for the end of August.
Okay.
General fund checking and money market, $598,201. General fund CD, $83,201. Historic landmark savings, $3,021. Stockard Youth and Community Center Capital Campaign, we got a little more donations in. We have $192,651. In that, we got some donations, like Jerry said, from Mid-Atlantic Storage for $1,000. The mayor donated $100 in August. Ham Martin, $150. They collected about $500 in donations from Stockard's activities, and Teresa Pullen, $150. Our revenues for the end of August, or through the end of August, was $432,573. Our expenses were $394,123. So we had a profit of $38,450. We received a $102,000 arts and culture grant for the theater. And expenses out of the ordinary that were in August was $92,050 to Cooper Asphalt for paving on Roar, Shawnee, and Meadow Streets. $4,552 to Frontier to relocate a utility pole. And $3,566 was expense to miscellaneous areas for training, registration rooms, tolls, and fuels for 3 of our personnel attending the CALIA conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan. In the last meeting, I mentioned that there was a premium increase through the audit at Brick Street. In the volunteer fire department, it was due to the hours that were reported for the in-house person. We're going back and reevaluating that, and our agent asked us to send a statement about how often that person's on call, because he may stay there, but he's not on call all the time. So we think we can reduce those hours and convince Brick Street to change that portion of the audit. The only other thing I have to say, on the paper shred event, we do cooperative events with Upshur Solid Waste Authority, and they are going to allow me to bring about 8 legal-sized boxes of documents that we have to shred. out there to shred. It's normally not for a commercial purpose, but they're gonna let me do that. That saves us a lot of time. We usually have to wait for the part-time people to come in to do that. And then, just as a comment, I don't know if you noticed the pictures from the camera club that are in here tonight for everybody to enjoy. That's all I have.
I would entertain a motion that we approve our August financials. So, I have a motion by Mr. Thomas, a second by Mr. Ryland. Is there discussion on that motion? Hearing the need for none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign, motion carries. Any questions for Amby? I got so quick to that approval of the thing.
I don't have a question, but I just want to again indicate that I thought Amby did just a excellent job.
Here, here.
Tuesday night, it was very, 42 years, right? It's pretty apparent that she's got a good hands-on to finances of the city, and I think her presentation was very well thought out and very well done. And thank you for doing that.
She started when she was 7.
I knew something was.
I know better than that.
I started when I was 6. All right, Fire Chief, J.B.
That wouldn't
Kimball.
surprise me.
Brian Elmore is filling in for J.B. Kimball. I heard some lame excuse from J.B. that his wife took off for Arizona and he had to watch the kids, and it would be a fate worse than death to the rest of us if his kids had to be here at the meeting. Is that pretty much what you?
Yeah, probably would be.
How about it, Brian?
Yeah. Chief asked me to come up tonight and just talk about the last July and August, the runs we had. So in those 2 months, we had 212 calls. In the month of July, we had 108 total calls. Out of those, 83 was considered emergency runs, which that consists of any type of structure fire, car wrecks with injuries or entrapment, car wrecks, any type of injuries or stuff like that, EMS calls, things like that. That's what we consider emergency runs. And out of that, 25 was considered non-emergency, which that could be public service calls, odor in the area of trees down in roadways, lines down, fuel leaks, things like that. And then in the month of August, we had 104 calls. We had 84 emergency runs, and we had 20 non-emergency runs for that month. So that's what he wanted me to go over with you tonight.
Thank you.
Any questions?
You could bring the report more often. That was.
Yeah, I told him I was going to be quick tonight.
Snappy. Yeah. Questions for Brian Elmore? Thanks, Brian. Tell all the guys to be safe.
All right.
First and foremost, that's what matters.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Next up is our city attorney, Tom O'Neill.
The only, my time will be spent later in the agenda under strategic issues. The only thing I'd like to point out in addition to that is in relation to the earlier conversation on the opioid issue, we are litigants in the multi-jurisdictional opioid litigation, and we have some paperwork that's due by the 17th. So we'll be spending the next week pulling together some numbers, and we're going to have to sit down with the with the police chief and with the fire chief to quantify our damages as a city over the past 15 years or 18 years. I think it goes back on that paperwork all the way to the year 2000. So we will be efforting that. Beyond that, my matters are set out later in the agenda, although I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for Tom? We're going to bring him back in just a few minutes.
I guess the only thing I have in correspondence, which is the next thing, there's another letter identifying a parking issue on East Main Street. And so now we're East Main Street to Route 20 via College Avenue kind of area. So
Mission Creek.
It's not, if you read the letter, it's not unlike the concerns that all these other citizens have had about an inability to park in an area near their house.
Yeah, it's ultimately whatever policy that the council settles upon can be implemented without any difficulty. And it's just about striking the balance between the needs of the residents to have easy access to their own property the city's posture as a community that wants to welcome people from beyond its borders into town. So I don't envy the council's task. However, I'm more than ready to put pen to paper to put into effect whatever your desires may be.
I think all of us just think it's great that Westland's here. But I'll just say publicly, I think the college should have been much more proactive in seeing this and doing something about it. That's my opinion.
Well, we're not alone. I mean, every university city has parking issues. Any city that is on the move growing, which we are downtown, we have parking challenges ahead with the new building construction. I mean, these are good problems to have. It means we're going in the right direction, so.
But we don't want the town gown, dialogue that can be very unhealthy sometimes.
Well, you don't want to set a precedent that, it's this particular issue revolves around college students or college employees that are somewhat seasonal. If it's in another part of town and we get neighbors or someone else parking in front of your house, that there's a implied right to this public spot.
And that's just what I was going to say. It's important to keep in mind that these are public streets that we're talking about here, and that the individual property owner does not hold any claim or title to that portion of the public street that is adjacent to their lot, and so the city has to strike a balance from a policy perspective.
Yeah, but the reality is that because of the large influx of students at this time of the year, I understand what you're saying as far as a public street, but from a practical standpoint, it doesn't help the residents feel very good about their situation.
Oh no, I agree, and that's why it's characterized as a balance.
Yeah, you got to strike a balance somewhere. But I think the college.
But it's a balance for the council to make, not for me to give.
I'm glad the college is here. I mean, I think everyone that's sitting up here feels the same way.
If we aren't, we're crazy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Tom. We'll bring you back here in a minute.
We may be crazy anyway.
Probably. Correspondence and information, you have a whole lengthy list of stuff, including the letter that CJ just mentioned from the East Main Street property owner. The West Virginia Department of Highway, Division of Highways, District 7 Roads to Prosperity report. There's a proclamation respecting Constitution Week. There's a FOIA request from Josh Hinchman, particularly budgetary information concerning our parks and streets. There's a letter regarding the Buckhannon Upshur Airport Authority line of credit and possible support transition thing that we may be talking about here at an upcoming meeting. There's the revised memorandum of understanding with John Moss concerning the Traders Alley wall. There's also a letter of understanding that we're working on with the Newman property. That's the old Dollar General property at the very end of Traders Alley beside Jawbone Park. There's the People for Bikes grant program request for full application. There's the Spread the Love Peanut Butter Drive notice, September 10th through 15th at the Parish House. There's a notice about the Buckhannon Truck Fest on September 14 from 5 to 8, and that would be Saturday, September 15, 9 to 3. The Buckhannon Children's Festival is also next weekend, Saturday, September 15, 10 to 2. The City of Buckhannon Fall Fest is at the end of this month, September 26 through 29. There's a thank you letter from Community Care of West Virginia concerning the paving of Locust Avenue and the Kanawha Street Alley. The SYCC elimination dinner notice for October 12 that Callie talked about a little bit ago, and we're already working on the Halloween events for the end of October. I would add to that I hope you all are mindful and remembering that on Thursday, October 25, the West Virginia Municipal League Board of Directors will be here, and you all will be invited to those various functions that we'll be doing Thursday afternoon and evening. So correspondence and information. The consent agenda consists of 5 matters. If you approve this, you would be approving the minutes from our last regular meeting of August 16, you'd be approving our building and wiring permits, you'd be approving the payment of our general fund bills, you'd be accepting the resignation. I guess you better accept it since we already hired a new one.
Put the cart before the horse again.
Yeah, a little bit. This would be formally approving the resignation of Sarah Campbell. And lastly, you'd be approving the event request. Matt didn't get it in on time. Actually, he did get it in on time, but the date of September 22 was already taken, and Consolidated didn't have it on its agenda, so I rolled it over for council to act on. I would entertain a motion that we approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Skinner. May I have a second to his motion?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Thomas. Is there discussion on that motion? Hearing of the need for none, I'll call for that question. All those in favor of approving our consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign, motion carries.
What's the date of the elimination dinner for stuff?
The Friday, October 12th.
And where would that be, Dave?
Project the Brushy Fork Event Center.
Okay.
And I forget the amount, Dave. I think it's $25.
And that'll be, you get a dinner too with that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, CJ's finest, right?
Roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans.
And what time is that?
My
6?
guess would be
6 o'clock?
6
I think there's a
o'clock,
reception at 6.
social hour.
Dinner at 7, something like that. Does that sound about right? We're still working out the details, and we got a little more time to remind you
Where
about.
do you get the tickets from?
Deborah Brockelman has them. We have them at City Hall too, don't we?
We will, as soon as she.
I think they were just printing those yesterday or today, so they'll be
I'll call
here.
you when we're ready to.
They'll be here right soon, Mr. Thomas.
Can you buy a table?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Then I'll give you a ride, David.
Pardon?
It's an extra $25 to buy a table.
What'd you say, man?
I said, I'll give you a free ride.
I want to
To Arby's.
I want to drive one of those Jeeps.
All right, back to focusing on our agenda. I would tell you that while we did have a new memorandum of understanding with Mr. Moss expanding what he's allowing the city to do in Traders Alley, we're still awaiting the execution of the deed of dedication. So we're going to table F1. And Jerry, unless you tell me that we've heard something new from Davis Health, we know it's in the works, we just don't have the document in our hands.
Did not get that today.
So F2 and F3 will also be rolled over. The next matter is F4, which is Resolution 2018-22, supporting home rule as a permanent program. Tom and I did warring resolutions, unknowing that we were. So anyway, this is this which one is it? Right there. Is that the which one's which?
Hey, Tom, do we want the legal size or the copy size?
Well, they're two different ones.
Which one are you looking at?
Both.
2018-22.
2018.
Now approach the bench.
I think this is the one we're supposed to sign. I'm pretty
I
sure.
would say the legal size one is the.
Does that look
would be
about
the-
right?
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go through this quickly. Resolution 2018-22 of the City of Buckhannon, a resolution supporting home rule as a permanent program. Understand that in 2008, there was a 10-year sunset legislation passed by the West Virginia legislature on a home rule pilot program. Actually, it was 2009. The 10 years is going to expire when the legislature meets in 2019. The last 2 years, the legislature failed to pass making it a permanent program, removing that status of pilot program. So the municipal league is asking all of its members, which is every incorporated municipality in West Virginia, and we have 100% participation, to lobby our legislators and Governor Justice to assure that we're going to be able to continue our home rule program. So whereas the City of Buckhannon supports and requests that its legislators and the governor pass and sign legislation into law removing the sunset date in West Virginia Code 8-1-5A and making the home rule program a permanent one in our state of West Virginia. And whereas the future economic progress of the state of West Virginia is directly tied to the success and viability of its municipalities, and whereas the intent of the legislature in enacting a home rule pilot program was to provide municipalities the framework in which to explore new ideas and evaluate the results to determine the viability of implementing solutions on a statewide basis and empower the municipal citizen with local control at the local level. And whereas the pilot program for municipalities in West Virginia was passed in, I lied, it's 2007, and has many proven success stories that have advanced the participating cities, thus benefiting the surrounding regions and the entire state of West Virginia under adoption of innovative, cost-efficient, and business-friendly implementations of home rule ordinances. And whereas as a home rule city, Buckhannon during the past several years now has realized several important initiatives that otherwise would have been prohibited under state law. And whereas the successful legislative audit, which allowed the pilot program to continue, has also given the legislature and the public an opportunity to evaluate the viability of these innovative approaches to improve urban and state development. And whereas the Home Rule Pilot Program has been used in the city of Buckhannon to streamline administrative burdens and produce economic development, and further specifically has permitted Buckhannon's realization of part-time police officers, online auctioning of municipal property, implementation of an enterprise zone to draw new business to Buckhannon, adopt the Sunday brunch bill and hence encourage tourism, and permit on-site issuance of housing enforcement and zoning ordinance violations. And whereas in order to continue to realize successful outcomes, the legislature must continue home rule as a permanent program. Now therefore be it resolved that the city of Buckhannon will work with the West Virginia Municipal League to reconstitute the work of the stakeholders group representing the Fire Marshal's Office, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Revenue in areas of concern that were addressed in the 2017 veto message to assure completion of the full legislative process and the continued success brought to the state through this program. Let it further be resolved that the city of Buckhannon supports and will aggressively pursue the passage of this permanent program to allow innovative and progressive problem solving at the local level, thus empowering the municipal citizen and placing local control at the local level. This was tweaked from what the municipal league sent us as a form resolution. We stuck in the various ordinances that we've adopted and during our 3-4 years as a participating municipality. I would love to entertain a motion that we approve Resolution 2018-22.
I'd love to move it.
So I have a motion by Mr. Skinner, a second by Mr. Thomas. Is there any discussion on this motion?
I wholeheartedly support this. I don't know how the state legislature could sunset this, but strength in numbers is key. And you know, there are cities in this state that would completely go bankrupt without this.
Absolutely.
And this is, the legislature far too long has had too tight of a grip and has been too unfair to cities across the state. And quite frankly, I think home rule needs to be expanded rather than restricted. So
I would tell you that our delegate Bill Hamilton has been one of the most firm and adamant supporters of home rule. And depending upon how things go in November for Bill, he would be continue to be an excellent advocate for us with a Senate that was not favorable toward making home rule permanent. So we have any further discussion on the motion? I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. The minutes will reflect that the resolution passes unanimously, but I will roll call the vote. Mr. Colin Rigger.
Yes.
Pam Caperi is absent. Mary Albaugh.
Yes.
Robbie Skinner III.
yes.
J. David Thomas.
Yes.
Clifford J. Rylands.
Yes.
And the mayor votes yes. Please sign this before you go. Mr. Rigger has the original. Okay, next up is F5, which is the approval of the Prevention Resource Officer, the PRO agreement renewal, between the City of Buckhannon, the Buckhannon Police Department, and our Upshur County Board of Education. Amby, is there an agreement actually in the packet?
Yes, it's in there.
Down at the bottom.
Da-da-da-da. I'm just looking for it. It's in your packet.
There it is.
You got it? I'll steal your copy. Tom, did you have a chance to review this?
No, I've only I only saw it this evening when I saw the packet. I've scanned through it, and obviously, it's concerning.
It's a
Just a
renewal
renewal the
of what we
existing.
did previously, and I don't think, no one has given any indication to me that there's anything new in this thing. I'll tell you what I would be apt to do, since Tom hasn't had a chance to review it, and I haven't reviewed it.
Table.
I think they're in a rush. So if we could tentatively approve it, subject to Tom O'Neill giving the thumbs up, that's the way I'd like to go with this, if council's in agreement. Does that sound like a workable plan?
Yeah.
Tom, can you let us know tomorrow-ish if there is an issue?
Well, I'm having surgery tomorrow morning.
Oh, well, okay, Saturday will be fine, Tom. First of the week?
Tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion to tentatively approve.
We have a motion to tentatively approve by Mr. Rigger. May I have a second to that? Mrs. Albaugh seconding his motion. Is there discussion on the motion? Call for the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Tom, next up is our drug house ordinance. You want to talk a little bit about that?
You have in your possession, members, a second, a revised draft of the drug house ordinance that reflects the changes that were discussed and requested the last time that we discussed this in a meeting.
It's run separate.
I'm sorry?
I was telling them that they're looking for.
Oh, it's not in the packet, it's a separate, it's a separate page. There.
You want to highlight those changes for
Sure, the
us?
changes eliminated the reference to illegal gambling. It clarified that searches of properties under abatement orders would require a warrant from the municipal judge before search, and cleaned up some technical grammatical problems in the language. This isn't a final. This is not a draft that is ready. I mean, it can't be acted on tonight. There are a couple other tweaks that.
An additional homework assignment?
Oh yeah.
We're going to look at this and
yeah.
maybe entertain it on first reading at the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Everybody sees this as an informational item. You know what your assignment is to check that out, make sure we can live with it.
I do have a couple issues with it.
Okay.
Of course you do, Mr. Libertarian. Go ahead, Mr.
I'm not a libertarian. Completely. My first issue.
Not completely.
No. Under Article 2, Order of Abatement.
Right.
Sorry, guys.
How did you read it?
Yeah, Article 2, Order of Abatement, items A and B.
A and B.
The chief of police, city engineer, zoning enforcement officer, or other authorized representative of the city. I think that's too arbitrary. I think there needs to be people who are specifically designated and given the ability to order the abatement, because what if someone considers themselves authorized? And who's issuing the authorization? The city council?
Then it would be a matter of whether they were in fact authorized or not.
So is city council, see what I'm saying? I think there needs to be some clarification about what it
Or
means.
the representative as authorized by the city council?
My response to that would be that the purpose of other authorized representative of the city is really to mean someone who is delegated by one of the named individuals, particularly other officers of the city of Buckhannon, right? Or members of the fire, well, not the fire department, particularly other police officers. That's
The way it reads, though, is anybody can just arbitrarily decide to bring an action to abate a public nuisance.
I don't think I'd agree with that. I wouldn't say that anybody could, any authorized person.
We can tighten that up.
That's fine. We can clarify it's just members of the city police.
Or
Yeah, or other police officers, yeah, something like that.
Or authorized by council.
Yeah. In fact, I would feel most comfortable that city council is the only entity that can authorize an individual to bring an abatement against what would be considered a public nuisance.
Other than the police chief, city engineer, or enforcement officer, or
Let me caution us on something. We have a housing enforcement board that is already responsible for these kinds of matters. I almost wonder if we shouldn't delegate this responsibility to the Housing Enforcement Board.
As long as
I'd rather
there's-
this not be coming before City Council. We got an agency that's responsible for those kinds of decisions.
As long as there is some kind of board, council, committee
Yeah.
who can come together and grant the authority to the hired individual to issue the abatement requirement, I would feel more comfortable if there was another check and balance in
I hear you.
in who's allowed to do this or take these kind of actions.
I agree, but I also agree, David. We have chief of police, city engineer, the zoning enforcement officer. Zoning enforcement officer, that's part of his responsibilities and duties.
Yeah.
That's his job.
Yeah.
Well,
We don't
not
need-
yet, because this isn't official yet.
Well, I know, no, but and being the zoning enforcement officer, he has other duties similar to this.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then you've got the board too, so.
Well, we can tweak that a little.
Can I recommend that maybe be changed to read in both A and B, the chief of police, city engineer, zoning, or zoning enforcement officer as authorized by the Housing Enforcement Board
Yeah.
to bring an action.
I think
That would make me happy.
Yeah. That would tie it all up.
It gets us closer. I'll come with more issues next meeting.
Libertarian
It did say
creative.
homework.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
We'll all study it, we promise. Next is, why don't we talk about residential parking around WVWC?
Is there more?
Hey, you students want to weigh in on this? All the rascals are gone now. Now you guys can tell us what you think. I'm just kidding. We'll continue to discuss this. I don't know if there's any. We've talked about it enough tonight.
Do we have students here?
Oh, we've got a whole bunch of students back there.
You didn't introduce.
But they're required to be here for class.
They didn't get to.
Some
Yeah,
some
it's like-
knucklehead requires them to come. Yes.
We have to
You
review.
don't come here voluntarily and go through this?
I brought them in cuffs and
A
manacles.
lot of
Look at
fun.
But they're supposed to stand up and introduce them.
it. We did forget that. We'll do that
We
right
didn't
before.
forget.
Right before
Mayor
we
forgot.
adjourn. Right? Authorization to proceed with the notice of public hearing to consider the amendment to the city's home rule plan. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, this has direct bearing upon the probable adoption of our sales tax mechanism and ordinance.
That is correct, Your Honor. And we've done this before, most recently with the brunch bill. The process by which we filed for an amendment to our home rule plan is clearly set out. The first step in that stage is to give notice of a public hearing no less than 30 days before when that public hearing would take place. The item on the agenda today would just be an authorization for
Start the
me to
process.
begin the wheels rolling on preparing the amendment to the home rule plan to permit the consideration of a later ordinance to implement the municipal sales tax.
Also, to cut to the chase a bit, our previous discussions, as we were talking about the timetable for implementation, and this was just as recent as Tuesday of this past week, we were operating under the premise that the probable earliest date for implementation of the sales tax would probably have been January 1 of 2020. In the last 48 hours, you've gotten some additional clarification and research that we now believe that if we have a draft ordinance to the state tax department while we are pursuing things through the Home Rule Board, that we may be able to implement this new sales tax as early as July 1 of 2019.
That's correct.
Which would be 6 months earlier than what we were operating under just a couple of days ago.
And
Watch out for Facebook.
And it would,
Yeah.
it would be advisable to consider that having the implementation of the measure coincide with the beginning of the city's fiscal year.
Right, absolutely.
That depends upon a number of things. That's how I read the rules as the Department of Tax and Revenue has issued them. I don't believe, I used to think, I thought at first that we'd have to go through the whole home rule process and then the ordinance process and then the tax department. But I believe now, after further research, that we can run on a couple of these tracks simultaneously. That is, while we are pursuing the home rule angle, we can also submit the draft ordinance as well as the supplementary materials that the tax commissioner requires as part of this prior to the home rule board actually ruling on our plan for time purposes. Now, obviously, if the home rule board were to reject our amendment, then it moots the whole process and it's all over. But in any event, if we can have all of the required materials together and to the state tax commissioner before December 31st of this year, I believe that we can have the measure, assuming approvals all the way along. There's obviously a lot of steps to this process, any failure at any one of which would doom the whole enterprise.
12 different steps that you've outlined in this timetable, Bush.
And including Tuesday's meeting, no fewer than 3 public hearings will be a part of this whole process. There's Tuesday's public hearing. There will be a public hearing to consider prior to adoption of the amendment to the home rule plan, and then there is required under code a public hearing before the adoption of the enacting ordinance itself to implement the sales tax. So I've put together, and I believe that you may have copies of this in front of you, a proposed timeline for this process, just some highlights. Tonight, if the council were to give authorization to get the wheels turning on this, we would endeavor to have publication of the notice of the public hearing in a Class 2 advertisement on September 17th and 24th, with the public hearing taking place on November 1st. In the meantime, we could have first reading of the ordinance, which would be scheduled for October 18th. Second reading to be held the same evening as the public hearing on and this would be the ordinance to amend, to authorize submission of the amendment to the home rule plan. Should that be adopted, we have to wait 30 days, and then we can actually deliver the amendment to the home rule board. They will meet sometime during the month. They haven't announced their meeting date yet. They will meet at some point during the month of January, at which time it would be our intent to be on that agenda for consideration. If they were to adopt or approve if they were to approve our plan, then we would proceed to first and second reading of the actual sales tax ordinance. And that would be tentatively scheduled for January 17th as first reading and February 7th as the public hearing and second reading and possible passage. That would mean that ordinance would become effective for purposes of the charter on March 9th, which is a Saturday. So on March 11th, we would then be able to submit the final adopted ordinance to the tax commissioner no sooner than March 11th, with an expectation that we would then, with the pump being primed, with everything having been to them before December 31st already, they'd be in a position to give their thumbs up or thumbs down, and we would be prepared to have an effective date of July 1st of next year for this.
There's one small but potentially big fly in the ointment with all of this, and it bears upon the resolution that we adopted a little bit ago. If the state legislature by the end of March were to pull the plug on the home rule program, that would hugely impact our ability to move forward. So this is kind of a hand in hand. We've got to be sure this program continues.
Well, I would say that yes. However, the home rule board would have already ruled on our amendment in January. So if the legislature fails to act, and I would say that, given my experience with the legislature on this matter, the failure of it to make it permanent is not a substantive problem with the bill. It was more of a procedural kind of give and take that on some other unrelated issues, at least as far as I was able to observe down at the legislature. So I have every expectation, just given my exposure and experience down there, that this will be made permanent and will pass. But even if it doesn't, I still think we fall under the sunset for two reasons. One, the board meets in January and we're going to be on the January agenda. And two, the code specifically states that even if the home rule plan is sunsetted, that any ordinance adopted under a home rule plan adopted or amended during the period of time the program was enabled remains in force in perpetuity or until repealed.
You heard our city attorney. We've been talking about this for months. We had our forum just a couple of nights ago. We know what this is about. Currently, our home rule plan consists of the 5 planks, the original 4 that were identified 3 or 4 years ago, and then we added the brunch bill about a year and a half ago. This would be the 6th plank to our home rule plan to adopt the comprehensive sales tax. I would entertain a motion that we authorize our city attorney to start these series of necessary events to move toward the sales tax.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Thomas, a second by Mr. Skinner. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing of the need for none, I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The minutes shall reflect that the motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Next up is something that's a little more pleasant than some of the other things we talked about tonight. The setting of our trick-or-treat date, and the proposal is that we schedule it for Halloween night, 6 to 7:30 on Wednesday, October 31. I'd entertain a motion that we, Mr. Rigger likes to trick-or-treat. He has made that motion. Could I have a second? I have a second by Mr. Rylands. Does somebody want to say we should do it on November 3rd or something? No, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Takes us down to our final strategic issue of the night. Should be like some massive applause for that. The Upshur County Commission has requested the city of Buckhannon to dredge the Pringle Tree boat access ramp to allow the Buckhannon Upshur High School football boosters to conduct a flotilla. I don't know exactly what this is involved with. We're not sponsoring it. We're not floating anything. All we're going to do is clean their boat ramp. Is that right, Jerry?
Yes, and again, I will have to reach out to the appropriate state agencies.
Okay.
To do that.
Yeah, God forbid we squish a minnow or something, right? Yeah, we don't want to do that. So Jerry will coordinate all those activities in advance of that. Everybody knows what we're doing?
Yep.
I would entertain a motion that we cooperate with our friends up the street with the county commission to realize their request. I have a motion by Skinner and a second by Albaugh. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing of the need for none, I'll call for that question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Takes us down to comments and announcements by council. Mary Albaugh, you're up first.
I don't have it.
Wow.
Good.
Pam Caperi is not here. Mr. Rylands.
I'm good.
Mr. Skinner.
I'll be good.
Snappy, as Rigger says.
Snappy
Mr. Thomas.
Look at it, grin.
Putting pressure on me.
No, Thomas.
Don't do it.
I think Tuesday was a very good process for us, and I'm not trying to slight anybody, CJ or Mary or yourself, David.
Go ahead.
But I'm very enthused about the 2 young individuals that sit on this council, and Bob Skinner and Tom.
David.
And I think that I listened to what they said, and I think it's pretty nice that we have 2 younger people on the council. They really think, you do too, CJ, but I also
is slower, right?
Well,
I'm waiting
yeah,
for
a
you to
little bit,
criticize me, David.
and
Go
I'm
ahead,
way
spit it out.
slower, so you know what the hell.
Thanks, Dave.
One may ponder how Dave Thomas is getting home now, but,
It's not going to Arby's, I can tell you that.
Why didn't Dave ever say anything nice like that about me when I was on council?
I said.
he never did like you, Tom.
I said something nice about you Tuesday, remember?
So moved there.
Out in the parking lot.
I agree, Dave. It was a great discussion, and I think the biggest impact was hearing from our supervisors that this stuff, the needs weren't fabricated by this council. The needs were identified by the guys in the trenches, and that's what it's all about.
But the future for the city is these younger people sitting up here. I think that's really impressive to me.
Mr. Colin Rigger, one of the young guys, do you got anything to say?
I have no comment.
No comments. I've already said everything I'm going to say tonight. I would, you do have in your packet the piece that it's a little disturbing that addresses Upshur County having slipped into threatened economic status with this latest report that came out of Charleston. It is noted that there's a pocket in Buckhannon that is not part of that distress level, but notwithstanding that, it's still cause for concern. So I'd encourage you to read the article. At 9:22, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Rigger and a second by Allball.
If you filibuster, Robbie,
Is there
so help.
discussion on the motion? Hearing the need for none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, adjourn, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.